On this episode, we visit Vienna, Austria. We meet Jim Walker, Strategic Director of Walk 21. We talk with the Program Director for the Walk 21 Conference. We learn about the Vienna Mobility Agency and their Pedestrian Strategy. Finally, we drop in on the opening press conference for Walk 21. Stay tuned.
We're in Vienna talking with Jim Walker with Walk 21. What is Walk 21?
Well, if you don't know that by now, we've been going for 16 years now, and we are the main group, in fact the only organisation that works internationally to promote pedestrians and to sort of network together the politicians, the experts in the field and the advocates on the ground. We put on a conference every year and we support people in between.
So, what have you been doing here in Vienna this week?
Well, yet again, we've had our conference. We have it every year, as I say, and we've been delighted to have it here in Vienna, which is, in theory, as they say, and it always hits the top of the list, the most livable place in the world. So we came here basically to find out why.
And why? What makes it do so well on those ratings?
Yeah, I think it's been great that they've opened up their doors to really let us have a look inside and sort of get out onto the streets and explore it a bit. They absolutely do have a great mayor. Maria Vasilako is somebody who's really campaigned for these things. She wants equity on the streets. She's really thought hard about sort of allowing people to sort of take over their public space and use it for better quality of life. And I think she's underpinned that with some really decent policies and a great relationship with the local community. And so what I see out there is time and time again, great stuff, just thoughtful, locally focused, people-centered, and it just looks great.
You have parts of Vienna that are centuries old and parts a little newer. What's been going on in the different parts of town?
Yeah, so obviously they've got these fantastic buildings in between all their streets that you can't help but notice and in fact be stunned by. I mean, there's some beautiful places, and just where we are today, even in the Rathaus, the town hall, it's great to have a conference underneath the chandeliers. But behind all that chandeliers, there's still these streets, there's still traffic, there's still people needing to get around on their everyday business. And what they're wanting to do here is make sure that quality is just as good as the chandeliers on the inside.
And the city's talking about not just having a week of walking, but a year of walking. How are they able to integrate your conference with what's going on the rest of the year?
Yeah, well, this conference, we've started to get a bit more confident in our ask when cities say they'd like to host something. We do ramp it up a bit now. We're pleased that we do. So when we said we'd come to Vienna, we said, well, some of the conditions, we'd really like it so that not just to celebrate all the good stuff you've already done and to show that it's a great walkable place, but, if you're going to do it, there should really be a city plan. They had one for cycling, and so we said, it makes sense there should be one for walking. They did a plan. We asked them for the budget for the conference, and they said no problem, but they said, actually, we're going to give you 10 times that. Not give it to us, but give walking 10 times that. And so instead of just having a week of walking, they've had a year of walking. And then when we said, we were scratching our heads thinking, well, what else could we ask for? And they said, well, what about nationally? What's going on? And so, sure enough, first session, not just the transport minister, but also the environment minister have joined forces, worked together to actually write a national walking strategy for Austria. And we couldn't be happier about that. That's a great legacy and a fantastic model, really, for other cities, other countries to now think, yeah, we could do that. We could host Walk 21, but actually it might just give us a good excuse to create that sort of stuff as well.
Is this the first time at one of your conferences that someone's released a national walking strategy?
Yeah, I think, we're aware there's a couple of other countries who've already done strategies. I think Norway was the first couple of years ago when we were in Munich, actually. And they've written a wonderful document. And it's interesting to see how that's progressed over the last couple of years. And in fact, I was just speaking earlier to Rona Gibb here from Scotland, and she's been writing a national strategy for Scotland. And what we find really interesting is that, of course, the strategy itself is a good start. It helps bring all the people in around the table and gets everybody thinking, what does this mean? What are we going to measure? What are we going to actually do? But it is just the beginning. And so I'm very sort of conscious that we shouldn't just sort of imagine that just because you've got a national strategy, it's in the bag. You still need to actually come up with a reasonable plan about what you're actually going to do and what you're going to spend your money on and how much you need. And most of all, of course, to be effective for politicians is to how you're going to guarantee to them that whatever you spend and wherever you spend it is going to actually guarantee results.
How many people were at this year's conference from how many different places? And what's going to happen when they all go home?
Yeah. Well, this year, yet again, we've got nearly 600 from about, I think it's 47, maybe it's up to 50 countries, which is always just deeply satisfying that, in all the pockets of the world, on every continent, there are people who are not just thinking about this, but willing to pay their own fares to come here to find out more about it, to take resources home and decide what they're going to do and how they can make their own places better. And so, for us, it's not just, a once in a year activity. There's that support that goes on behind the scenes for all the other weeks of the year. And we're growing those communities in places now that we never thought we would ever reach. So that, in places like where we are talking about here in Vienna, where you might have a choice to walk, and whether you want to create a walkable environment as a way to encourage people to stay and choose to live here, which is exactly what's happening. Next year and in other places that we hope to go to in the future, we're also working with communities where walking is a necessity. And so when we go to Hong Kong next year, we're thinking, there's a hell of a lot of people there already, and actually there's no other options, than public transit and walking. Less than 10% of their modal share is by car, and so it's a very different city.
And when you talk about trying to make walking an attractive option so people who might be driving or using some other mode are attracted to walking, how does your approach differ when you're dealing with people that are walking because they have to, and what do you just figure they deserve to have a nice place to walk, or what's your strategy there?
Yeah, I think it doesn't matter who you are and where you are. If you're on your feet, you deserve to feel safe, to be in an attractive environment as possible, and it should be accessible for people, whatever your needs. And so someone described here today at the conference, they came on in a wheelchair and were explaining what it was like to be at that level, to experience the street and the sort of the discomfort you have of people smoking in your face and banging you with their bags and this sort of stuff. And they said, but don't ever imagine that. He says, okay, I have a disability, I'm in a chair. He said, but everybody else is someone who might have a disability at some other point in life. You can't, and I reflect on my own life, the times I've been carrying children or been weighed down by shopping or, hurt my ankle and I was hobbling around and stuff. These are perfectly natural things. And I think these are the things we have to make sure that we have our cities right for children and for old people, for people with disabilities especially. But let's get it right for people first. And what we've heard, whether it's in India, we've had some great presentations from there, or San Francisco, which you'd think is almost like giving up walking because it's gone digital. It hasn't at all. That what they have in common is that they're both thinking about people first, and they're both trying to make sure that the necessity of walking is actually what defines the way that the city works, and that's fantastic.
And you had a speaker from India, if I recall correctly. She also spoke at the very first Walk 21 conference in London. How have things progressed over the last many years?
Yeah, we've just been reflecting on that. I mean, we think about it every year, but it's not always easy to remember the changes. But I think when we first started, it was this invisible issue, and we were surprised how many people came the first year, but they did come and they were interested. And so it was all about visibility for a couple of years, just raising awareness and thinking about it and getting it on agendas. I think the years that followed that, we then gave people confidence enough to sort of think, well, what can we do? And they got some evidence, and they started working out the facts and the figures and what it meant, and how healthier or happier or less carbon, impact on obesities and cancers and all this stuff that we've now got literally at our fingertips, which is fantastic. And I think then from there, probably in the few years that followed that, people use that as a basis to then do some stuff, quite a lot of stuff actually. And what we're now saturated with is examples of projects and people's evidence that shows where things have had an impact, where maybe things haven't been so successful. But they're sharing all of that, and people are coming, they're cutting, they're pasting back home, and they're just rolling this stuff out, confident that the fact that other people have already tried it, that it's got evidence-based research behind it, so it's the right thing to do, and knowing that even if there might be a bit of disgruntle at the beginning from people who are a little bit worried that you might be about the way you're changing your community, that ultimately, and as we've seen here, particularly today, mayors are getting elected on this stuff now because people are being brave enough to get on with it. So time and time again, we've got, I think, a dozen mayors here at this particular Walk 21 conference, which we've never had before. But those dozen mayors are coming, not just because we invited them, but because they're so proud that they've done something amazing on this agenda.
We're in Vienna talking with Andrea Veninger, who's program director for the Walk 21 conference here in Vienna.
Hello.
What does the program director do?
The program director is responsible for the whole conference program, starting on Monday, ending on Friday, which is actually today. And we are organizing all the speakers. We are doing the program together with Jim Walker, Bronwyn Thornton, with Thomas Keller from the city, and the conference director Wolfgang Thorak. And we're having a little working group where we develop the program all together.
What things were you taking into consideration when you decided how to organize the program?
For me, it's very important that we have a mixture of people, old people, young people, different themes, different topics. It's important to have a lot of women in the program. That's especially important for me, that we have a lot of female plenary speakers. And of course, quality is always an issue. But that's kind of hard to find out from an abstract, which is only 1 page long. Yeah.
What themes did you develop for this year's conference? What were people talking about?
This was very difficult to plan, actually. We had the topic of living quality, the topic of change, like being a city, how can a city be resilient for change? This was actually a major, very important topic for us. And of course we received a lot of abstract for being and getting resilient, which is very important for active mobility.
And you have a lot of different session types, the plenary sessions, workshops, the Pechakucha, where things go through in rapid form, roundtables and so on. What considerations go into that? What sort of format might be appropriate for what sort of presentation?
It depends on the people. If you know people that are very, very good speakers, you maybe send them on the plenary. That would be a good idea. But we like to mix things. We like to have roundtables where people can really chat with each other and not only hear a presentation and then go to the coffee break. So it's very important to have different formats where people can really talk to each other, learn from each other, which is when you have a normal presentation and then two people can ask questions, it might be boring for 4 days. So we just like to mix up the program a little bit.
And you mentioned coffee breaks, nice half-hour-long coffee breaks. I saw a lot of people interacting and talking. Was that something you planned for, that people would have a chance to talk?
Yes, that's the important thing of a conference, to get to know people from another continent, from another country. You might be developing projects together. You might, after the conference, you have a new phone number, your new friend who you can call afterwards. I heard your presentation. Can you give me more information about this? Actually, it's the main idea of having a conference.
Someone organizing a Walk 21 conference in a future year, what advice would you give them?
It's a lot of work. Take a rest in between, it's important. And the most important thing is to choose good plenary speakers, I guess, that they have a lot of energy and they can push topics forward. I think that's the main part of the program, and I hope that Vienna did well.
We're talking with Petra Jens with the Vienna Mobility Agency. What is the Vienna Mobility Agency?
It's an agency. It was installed to promote walking and cycling and also accessibility.
And what do you do for them?
I promote walking. I'm the representative for pedestrian matters in Vienna, so everybody can call me or talk to me if there are some problems on the street. But we also create campaigns and we work in the Pedestrian Strategy for Vienna.
What's in the Pedestrian Strategy? If I picked up a copy and read it, what would I find?
We want to increase the quality of pedestrian infrastructure. We want to increase the pedestrian network in Vienna. We want to create some walking boulevards all through Vienna, connecting different districts to provide green areas and spaces where you can not just only walk, but also sojourn. Is this the right expression?
Sojourn, which means walking more for pleasure rather than trying to get to the subway.
Yes, we want to motivate people to walk, but we want also motivate people to complain if there's something not that good that they want to have it.
When you get calls from the public, people are concerned that something's wrong. What sort of concerns do you hear from the public that things that you can fix and make better?
Here at the conference?
Well, no, as part of your day-to-day job.
People.
Yes, someone in Vienna gives you a phone call and says, something's not right.
Yes.
What do they complain about?
The most important problems are cars in our street, speed of cars, and aggressive behavior. That's what pedestrians don't like. The most important problems are traffic lights. Traffic lights that are too long red and too short green. And pedestrians desire a friendly behavior on the streets. They don't like cyclists on the pavements, especially fast cyclists. That's a problem. And we work on that. We work on a better together on our streets, involving car-based organizations, cycling advocate organizations, and so on. Driving schools, These are our partners in campaigns concerning a better together on the streets.
So what's been your role in the Walk 21 conference this week?
My role was to create a campaign in the whole year to prepare this conference, to tell the people why we why we invited the Walk 21 here in Vienna. Why is walking good for a city? My role was to create the public events, the public side events. So the biggest was last weekend. At the beginning of the conference, we had a urban village in front of the city hall, and 12,000 people joined it. And there we created a huge map of Vienna. It was large, 900 square meters large, and people could step on this map and looking for their own house, and they could draw some messages or some lines where they like to go, and this was a very, very interactive tool. I don't know if you had the chance to go there.
Yes, I did manage to see the map and
Okay.
the people walking and
You
riding.
enjoyed it?
It was very interesting to see the city that way. What sort of things were people writing on it? Did you have a chance to read them afterwards?
Yes, I was surprised. Mostly they wrote very nice things, such I was here, or this is my favorite place in Vienna. And it was very amazing that especially elderly people, they told us their stories from former times when there was war, or people made across on places which have a special meaning for them. For example, the hospital where the child was born, or a park where they fell in love, or so. Very nice stories, and I think such a huge map is a tool to create relationship between people and the built environment.
How important was it that you had activities that can involve the local people and not just have the conference attendees fly in from overseas and then go home?
That's very important. That's very important, and it was a great pleasure for me to get this job, to explain the citizens of Vienna. Look, walking is important. It makes something with yourself. It makes something with your brain. It makes something with your health. It makes something with your relationship to other people. But it also makes something with the whole city. It makes it more vibrant, more pleasant. It's good for economy. That's what we often forget. And it saves space. A space is something that's gone more and more worthy in a city.
So what are you going to do for the rest of the year of walking?
The year of walking actually ended now. We started in autumn last year with the first Street Life Festival. And now with the conference, it's the end.
What comes next then?
Yes. Now we are evaluating this campaign. We did some research before. Now we do a survey, an after survey, and then we will measure what impacts it had. I expect impacts in the image of walking. I expect that we reach people that never talked about walking before in that way we do. And as a long-term impact, I hope that we get more people walking in Vienna. We will publish the report, the evaluation report of the campaign at the end of this year. And we will also publish it in English. So if you're interested in, please visit our website, wienzufuss.at. Yes.
So my name is Jim Walker, and I'm a director at Walk 21. We founded this organisation back in the year 2000, and we founded it in Europe, actually in London at the time, where we were recognising that actually people were starting to walk less. And people often said, well, why a conference on walking? Do we really need to learn how to remember how to put one leg in front of another? Do we really need to teach these things? And whose responsibility is it in order to encourage people to walk more or to facilitate the amount of walking that actually already happens in a city? Because whether you're in the developing countries or here in these parts of Europe, like here in Vienna, there are people walking all the time. But what we found is that very often it doesn't get measured, it isn't thought about, there are no strategies, there are no plans, and there's nobody particularly asking for it. And we felt that actually this needed exploring, it needed understanding more. And we had to start looking at deconstructing walking, I suppose, so that we explore it both as a science and as an art. Because of course I don't think we should forget the joy of walking and the enjoyment that we get from enjoying our cities from all the senses as we walk on it every day. And I think that we've had to work out the evidence, develop really detailed understanding from a health point of view. We've engaged with planners, engineers, academics, and it's also important to connect with activists. What we found is that there's a community of people internationally across 50, 60 countries already that have made contact with us who are interested in these things. Not just interested, but I suspect you'll find if you are able to stay for a bit more of the conference, a real passion. And I think that what we find unique, whether you're a politician, an academic, a professional engaged inside a government organisation, or an activist, a community member individually on the street, and we'll be hearing from some of all of those people across the whole conference, is that they are joined in recognising that that ability to walk, that right to walk, and that enjoyment of the walk does make the difference between a nice place or a place where you might not choose to want to stay. And we know that Vienna has been probably pretty much at the top of that tree for many years as one of the most walkable destinations. People say it's one of the most livable cities in the world, and that really is a shorthand for if you were to see how many people are on the streets and walking, and not just moving, but actually choosing to stay and enjoy that public space, you'll know that something is right here. And what we've been looking at over the last, not just few days, but actually for the last couple of years in advance of this conference, is working at all levels with the community, with the experts here in Town Hall, and with the politicians as well, to actually understand what is working and what still could be done. And I'm really enthused to find that not only do you have good leaders, but you have people really engaged in the conversation. You've opened your doors to let us in to really understand why it works, but also you've given us the challenge to say, how could you be better? And I really appreciate the fact that there's no complacency here.
Visit us on the internet at www.pedestrians.org.